The last time I was here was 2 years ago, and it was such a great experience. It was a really great experience. I've been thinking about and talking about nothing but that reading ever since. And it's 2 weeks ago, my wife says, where are we going to have dinner tonight? And I said, well, we were in Ventura at the reading, and it's kind of a problem. So the other effect is that this experience it was so good then that this is bound to be disappointing. Who's already disappointed? It's just okay. Yeah. I appreciate your honesty. I'm gonna. Yeah, when I first went to the Cobalt Cafe, it was at its first location on Ventura Boulevard. And I was not the host at the time. It was a guy named Steve who his main interest in hosting, as I recall, was there was another guy named Steve who hosted an open mic and then got discovered and went on MTV.
Yes.
And so this other Steve said, I'm Steve, therefore I should host an open mic and I could get on MTV. And I don't think he ever did.
No,
But
I don't think
so then he realized that and he stopped hosting and then I took over.
I'm so grateful that
Yeah. I'm gonna read a bunch of poems, which I think is the purpose of why I was invited, and Phil included this particular one in his email that he sent out about this reading. So I'm gonna start with it. This is good if you're a poet and you sometimes wonder what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. I've written the definitive set of rules for poetry. So here you go. This is called Rules for Poetry. Never use adjectives unless you're trying to describe something and you don't want to do it the hard way. Never use the word forever. It reminds people they're going to die. And the last thing you need is people distracted by their mortality during your poem. Write what you know. Unless you're a fool, in which case, look to the internet and write about something there. Avoid vowels and their angry sister, the letter Y. Avoid cliché. On the other hand, learn the difference between epigraphs, epigrams, and episiotomies. Use as few words as possible. In fact, hand out blank sheets of paper and tell them it's your finest work. If you ever use the phrase, darkness in my soul, be prepared for me to come to your house and kill you. If you're going to write in form, do it right. For example, as I understand it, a haiku is 800 words written while sitting on a cheesecake. Line breaks are important, but use them carefully. Once you've broken a line, its mother will never forgive you. Finally, go to poetry workshops. Sometimes they serve food, and you can't write poetry if you're dead because you forgot to eat. Thank you. That's from my book, Making Love to the 50-Foot Woman. Think about that. I've had a kind of a banner year for putting out books. I just put out this book called God Wrestler a couple weeks ago. I wrote a poem a week last Jewish year in response to that weekend's Torah portion. So that's exciting. And so I'm going to read something from that a little bit later. And then just a few months earlier, I write a travel book every year. We go on this vacation, and my wife and I spend a lot of time writing while my wife sits around waiting for me to finish writing what I'm writing. And a vacation poetry book comes out. And I got on this press, and they weren't putting out books as fast as I wanted. And so I got behind and convinced them that it would be a great idea in December to put out 3 of them all at once, which was a terrible idea. But they did, and just the fact that you have to carry 3 around that I do is an issue. But so this first, I'm going to read a few from each of them. This first One is called Professor Clown on Parade, and it's all poems written in Burlington, Vermont, in Connecticut, and in Portland, Maine. So there you go. This is called Here's the Problem. A third of the way to the airport, I realize I left my wedding ring at home. As long as it's not a statement, Addie says. At breakfast in Terminal 3, my coffee mug comes with lipstick from its previous user. Addie tells me how they never clean glasses properly in hotel rooms. She doesn't want to go into detail before our food comes, but the image is there. The waitress tells us they've run out of egg whites. I wonder how that's possible if they still have eggs. Have they lost the technology which allows them to be separated? That is a question only assholes would ask, and it is too early in this book to take that path, so I keep it to myself. Assholes, I think. And already this book is unsuitable for children. It's so presumptuous to assume I'm writing a book. I'm going to have to earn my wedding ring back. It begins by not putting my lips on someone else's lipstick. The coffee is okay. The kitchen has figured out how to provide egg whites. My naked finger. I've got 12 nights to make this right. And I did. Alrighty. We typically start our trips by dropping our son off in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He has family there. It's not like one of those escape room things, and we're not putting him through a test. We spend a couple nights there and then go on our trip. So this was written in Allentown, Pennsylvania, at my wife's parents' house. This is called New Potato. In Allentown, Pennsylvania, my father-in-law walks in from the backyard, a stack of fountain pens in his hand, asks my mother-in-law, "Do you have an old potato you're not using?" She tells him she only has new potatoes. He asks if he can just have part of one, and she explains essentially it's all or nothing when it comes to potatoes. He wants to use the potato to clean his fountain pens. She gives a new potato to the cause. It's okay. Getting more potatoes is not really an issue. And one more from this book. This is called Vacation in Hartford. Anyone ever had a vacation in Hartford, Connecticut? Yeah, you've been there. Yeah, that's pretty much when I was in Hartford telling people that we were on vacation there for a couple nights, they all fainted. I mean, it was... The confused look on anyone's face when we tell them we're vacationing in Hartford. I've never heard of anyone vacationing in Hartford, they would all say. You've got one of the oldest museums and the Mark Twain House and a lily pond, I say, defending their own town to them. You're vacationing here, the waitress asks us, and then quickly points out the synagogue across the street, built in 1872. She becomes our tour guide. We almost forget to order food and ask for the check when she tells us it hasn't been a synagogue for 20 years. Dave Matthews is playing somewhere in town. Costume players from the convention litter the streets. We eat dinner across the street from a synagogue built in 1872. It's 2014 and the building is for sale. Call Chuzzik Realty if you're interested. Thank you. To be clear, that was a few years ago, so I'm not sure it's still on the market.
Probably bought by a Korean church.
Probably. It's funny because I know a Jew who just bought a Korean church. Which, believe it or not, I'm not making up. Pico Union Project, downtown. Used to be a synagogue, then it was a church for years, and then this Jewish guy bought it. Now it's kind of a synagogue again. This poem is the title poem of this book. It's called Making Love to the 50-Foot Woman. As always, dedicated to you, Friday. Foreplay takes a week. You have to buy a ladder. When she says just a little to the left, you get there by car. You can have her in 2 different neighborhoods at once. Mood music, an orchestra, her bed, a forest. Protection? Let's just say you can get lost in the options. When she finishes, it makes the news. Items fall off shelves. Bridges collapse. When you finish, she doesn't notice. Glad you find that funny. With a woman so large, feeling inadequate is normal, but she is sweet, makes you comfortable, looks down at you with her eyes like 2 Hubble telescopes, says to you with open mouth and legs, "Don't worry, sweetie, you're just the right size." This next book I'm going to read from is called Romancing the Blarney Stone. It was from 2 or 3 summers ago. We went to Ireland. I'm not trying to show off. We just like going places. You should go places. If I were you, I would leave here now and go somewhere. I mean, this is called Somewhere Over Canada. It is 7:30 in the morning, and my eyes are staging a revolution of closing hours. I message Brendan to ask if he is awake, with a quick follow-up telling him I am not. They will not hold planes for tired people, so if you wish to go to a place that is different from the place you are in, you will need to defer to the schedules of others. Behind me, they discuss the size of water bottles. This is a topic I have nothing to add to. They say this flight is non-stop, but I can't imagine any other kind.
Okay, I found something on the web to say this flight is non-stop.
Siri thinks I'm talking. Shh, I'm not talking to you. Sorry. We've been having issues. This is a poem written in Syracuse, New York, where I have relatives, where we again dropped off our son with my relatives. This is called Cemetery. Gophers are taking over the cemetery where my grandparents are buried. We have to avoid falling in their holes. 2. Gregory cleans the headstones of our grandparents with a brush he had in the car for this kind of occasion. He is prepared for any kind of occasion. 3. We open the box and return my mother to her parents. It looks like her father gets a little more. Daddy's little girl. The rain will finish the job of bringing them back together. We say words, Jewish words and other words. Not everyone wants to say words. We put stones on the headstones. 5. The white sand of my mother, now a blanket to her mother and father, returned to where she began. A couple of poems actually written in Ireland. This is called Not Iceland. The boy in Dublin wearing the shirt that said Iceland is one of the first things we see. We're not falling for that again. Alrighty. This is called One Last I mean, you're sort of skipping the entire Dublin trip, but, there's only so much time tonight. So this is One Last Stroll Through Dublin. I get so nostalgic about places I just met. Temple Bar, like a Quartier Latin, turned up all the way. Trinity College, somehow we toured you 3 times. I want to enroll there and never go to classes. O'Connell Street, we tried our best to avoid you, but you cut through the city like an elephant in the room. Molly Malone, fictitious but every woman's story. Oh, Molly, people climb on you like they own you. Oh, Guinness and Jameson, have you two met? In every pub you commingle like distant cousins. Oh, Liffey, what city could be mentioned without its lifeblood river? Los Angeles doesn't count. It's hardly a city. It's a cacophony of neighborhoods without a center. We're not in love with you, Dublin. We're not in love with you, Dublin, but we'd come out for a walk and a pint every week. We'd be your close friend. We could trade babysitting if you bring your kids. I hope we meet again. The distance is so inconvenient, but let's keep in touch. You never know. The Vikings may come to California and we'll need a place to go. Oh, water of life. Oh, fiery red hair. Salante. Thank you. I'm going to read a poem from my brand new book, which just came out like 2 weeks ago, God Wrestler. How many of you study Torah every week without fail? 1, okay. The rest of you are just shy about it. That's okay. It's no problem. The idea, the Torah is basically the Old Testament. It's the first 5 books of the Bible, and the idea is that as a Jewish person, you're supposed to read that story every week, and that happens all year, and then the year ends, and you do the whole thing over, and you do it year after year forever until you die. And as kind of like a modern person who doesn't necessarily believe in anything, the tradition of doing that is still kind of cool. And it's a challenge to read these ancient stories and figure out, well, what does this have to do with your life today? Like, what is this person, what are the laws of how I'm supposed to treat my slaves? How do I interpret that into something meaningful, etc.? So that's basically the idea behind this book. And I'm going to read, so this particular Friday, this Saturday, this Shabbat, the Torah portion we're coming to the end because Rosh Hashanah is coming, and Moses is basically up on a mountain recapping everything that's already happened. So it's kind of boring, and you have to you're trying to figure out, well, man, I just wrote about this already, and he's saying the same stuff again. So I'm going to read the poem that I wrote for this week's Torah portion, and then we'll have a Jewish prayer service, and I'll read some more poems. So here you go. This one actually was written in haiku. It's when you read these things, they're divided into 7 parts. So if you go to a Saturday morning service, it's a whole ritual thing. Someone will call you up and they chant, and it's all very exciting. So there's a haiku for each of the 7 portions. Are you ready? Okay. Shoftim. 1. Worship an idol, be put to death. These are the laws of our people. 2. A king shall write 2 Torah scrolls in his life. No mention of a queen. 3. Priests get no land, but unlimited free meat, and God their inheritance. That's awesome as a vegetarian to learn that, by the way. 4. No sorcerers or mediums. In other words, no Coney Islands. 5. Only the prophets speak for God, and the murderers get their own cities. 6. Let's all build houses and get married. Then no one has to go to war. 7. May I suggest we treat all people like we're told to treat their fruit trees. It's a weird thing, and then I'll shut up about Judaism. But there's a law in there that if you're having a war, that you can't destroy the fruit trees of your enemy. which is like, sounds so cool, if you can get past the fact that you're having a war, I'm going to close by reading a few poems from this book, I just read from that one. So many books, I lose track. From this book, Donut Famine, which was written in New Orleans last summer, which is an awesome, awesome place. And then one poem to close the whole thing out. Anyone been to New Orleans? New Orleans is such a special, cool, awesome place. And if you like anything, you should go there. Because they have it. And they have the best of it, and they don't care, and it's all fun. So I really recommend going to New Orleans. Here you go. May 2016 is what this is called. I tell Addie in New Orleans you can pay to have an alligator eat you. We are a month away from our trip, and in of all places, Milwaukee. She is not ready to comment on this as we walk up the Milwaukee River looking for locally sourced cheese. I tell her this book isn't going to write itself. She's not ready to comment on that either. This is sort of the sequel to the poem about my mother in the last book. We started the trip in Syracuse again before we went to New Orleans. This is called We Visit My Mother at Poilly Tzedek Cemetery. She's right where we left her a year ago. The winter and the rains didn't quite do the job I thought they would. Another man's gravestone is leaning up against my grandmother's in a manner I can only guess my grandfather wouldn't have approved of. We search for evidence of their parents in this field of the dead that started with the Scottish, whose stones have yielded to the uncleared weeds of spring. The Jews have made good use of the lawnmowers of Syracuse, and you can see evidence of ancestors all the way up to where the top of the hill meets the sky. Our son wanders into an Orthodox family ceremony, either an unveiling or a yahrzeit. He doesn't know. He just sees people and knows he is one of them. This was written in, it's before we went to New Orleans. We went to Baton Rouge, which is the capital of Louisiana, and this was written in an exhibit that was portraying Hurricane Katrina. It's called When the Water Comes. When the water comes, we'll be wearing capris. We'll need to get the canoe out from behind the door at the art gallery. We'll take it seriously. When the water comes, the man in the next room will be quiet. The shampoo will be where it's supposed to be. The loose clothing we wear to tolerate this weather won't help. When the water comes, people will finally update their websites. Museums will stay open at night. The railroad track won't frighten us. When the water comes, you'll get a silk tie with any animal you want on it. The second line parades will happen year-round. Your neck pain will disappear. When the water comes, by definition, the drought will be over. Your accent will not define you. You will go to sleep, and when you wake up, it will still be there. This was written on Bourbon Street. It's called Bourbon Street. The man holding the 2-for-1 sign is standing right next to the woman with the 3-for-1 sign. We're hoping a battle to the death breaks out, or in the spirit of New Orleans, they combine their forces and offer a 5-for-2 special. Got 2 more from this book, and then I'm going to end with one other poem. This is called Heavy. The shampoo brand in our hotel shower is Tuscan Soul. So you can imagine what I'm going through right now. Anyone here going to die ever? Just a couple of you, a few of you. Okay. I'd like to talk with the rest of you. We went on a swamp tour and where we got to see a lot of alligators, which was pretty cool. My biggest fear on this trip was that an alligator was going to eat me. I guess I said that in a poem already. Sorry for wasting your time by repeating that. So I wrote this on the bus ride home or back to New Orleans from the swamp. This is called When I Die. When I die, have a jazz funeral. Second line it. Make it funny. Guys dressed as Groucho, rainbow suspenders, comic arrows through their head. When I die, bury me in an above-ground cemetery. Put up a ladder so people can climb up and see as far as they can see. When I die, turn my house into a museum of me. Let people open the cabinets and see how I hid the curios from my travels. Let the smaller ones try on my outfits. Make cat petting a free add-on experience. Actually, make that mandatory. When I die, take my wife in your arms. Don't let her feel alone. So cute clapping like that. It's just cute. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for listening. Happy birthday, Friday. What a special treat to be able to be here with you on this day. We're the same age for another few weeks. So that's cool. I'm feeling like this is now the experience that I'll be talking about for the next 2 years. For me, I don't know about for you, but for me, this has been really cool. I'm really looking forward to hearing all of you guys in the open reading. Since I stopped hosting a weekly open reading, which I did for almost 21 years, I'm finding it harder and harder to tell my wife, oh, I'm just going out to an open reading. You stay here with the kid, So it's a serious treat to be in this environment and with all of you fellow poets. So thank you very, very much. I got books if you're interested. Talk to me in between bites of cake. And this I wrote a year and a half ago or so. The prompt I was given was It's a Wonderful Life. 1968. I come out of my mother several weeks early. As with all things, she assumes it's a conspiracy. 1970. I try to turn on the house by inserting the car keys into an electrical outlet. I have no further memory of this. 1973. I instruct all of my colleagues at the Sun Country Safari Preschool to gather at the other end of the playground so we could start a club. When I see them all there from the other side of the yard, I realize I have nothing to tell these people. 1976, a vague memory of Fort Lauderdale fireworks. Our nation is 200 years old. I won't discover disco until 1989. 1977, we moved to Syracuse, New York, the home of my ancestors, where once the snow was taller than me, which has been universally assessed as nothing remarkable. 1981, the Scoutmaster asks me to lead the pack in a song as we hike through the Adirondack Mountains. In hindsight, the song about the bear chasing a man through the woods was not my best choice. 1982, a girl at the junior high school 50s dance asks me to dance. It won't be the first time I miss a potentially formative experience due to acute shyness. We ride a Greyhound bus to Pasadena, California. I don't change out of these golf pants for 3 days. When we arrive, I ask the driver where the ocean is. He says, "Do you see where the mountains aren't? That's where the ocean is." 1983, I learn people my age can hug each other. It changes everything. 1986, I win a trophy almost as tall as the 1977 snow, which is no big accomplishment. 1989, I discovered disco. 1990, Santa Cruz, California. I do everything I've ever wanted to do on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, butterflies hovering above. I embarrass myself at the Saturn Cafe when I discover chai but order it in the original Hebrew. 1992, I work at a radio station where my job is to point at people until they say things. The space between my pointing and them speaking is meant to be nil. 1994, I host a poetry reading every week for almost 21 years. Obviously, much of this occurred outside of 1994. 1999, I let Al Gore take credit for inventing the internet. 2000, the world ends in an explosion of ones and zeros. I act as if nothing has happened. 2002, I meet my beloved in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, where the mosquitoes are as large as poodles. 2003, I propose to my beloved in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, in a room filled with sunflowers and strawberries. Spoiler alert, she says yes. 2004, I eat fondue with my beloved in Paris. Paris becomes a third party in our love. 2008, we release a blonde-haired, blue-eyed child into the world. A woman in Northridge tells us he is TV cute. 2009, our child utters his first words. Uh-oh. 2012, we eat fondue in Paris again. Our child back in Van Nuys, where we hope to God someone is feeding him. 2014, my mother leaves the earth. Ashes mailed to Syracuse, New York. I'm starting to think it is a conspiracy. 2015, I'm holding on to disco like it's 1989. Thank you very much.